Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Hello there. Welcome to this month's Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum. This is our first show in 2021. I'm Lila Jaber. I started the forum in 2015 to do exactly what the video just said, to learn more about an industry so vital to Florida's economic future. And I can't think of a better way to kick off 2021 than with the guests we have today, Katherine Neebe with Duke Energy's Chief Sustainability Officer and President of the Duke Energy Foundation, which has a huge role in the charitable and philanthropic efforts on behalf of Duke Energy, and Lauren Magnusson with Walmart, who has all responsibility over ESG. We'll learn from Lauren what that is and what that means for a company like Walmart. And then finally, we're going to use their personal stories and their work in the energy industry to inform, inspire, and motivate the next generation of leaders to join the industry. So Katherine and Lauren, welcome. Welcome. So good to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. I'm really excited here.
Go ahead, Katherine, please. Yeah. And I'm going to throw the first question out to you.
I was going to say, no, it's so great to kick out 2021. I'm so excited to be here with all of y'all and start the year off with some great momentum.
Thank you. Thank you. So you've got such a huge role at Duke Energy. Do you want to talk about what it is you do for the company and the impact you hope that it will have in 2021?
Sure. So I'm Chief Sustainability Officer, the President of the Foundation, and the VP of National Engagement and Strategy for Duke Energy. And as I think about the year ahead, we've got a huge focus on achieving our net zero by 2050 commitment in our electricity generation and net zero in 2030 for our methane emissions. And the opportunity for us as a company to really lean in on issues that are front and center with our customers, with our stakeholders is just really, really extraordinary. So some of the issues that we'll be focusing on include environmental justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, the just transition. So a huge portfolio of work and a really exciting one.
It's wonderful, Katherine. Thank you for all that you do. Thanks for your leadership. And Lauren, so you have a very large title for a company people don't expect necessarily. It's not intuitive that you've got involvement in the energy industry. Do you want to describe what you do for Walmart?
Sure. I'm responsible for shaping Walmart's ESG. And for those that aren't familiar, ESG is environmental, social, and governance topics. So it really spans a wide range of topics that we touch every day. But I'm responsible for shaping our agenda, and that includes everything from our disclosures and our practices and our policies. And like I said, it's everything from kind of climate to board diversity to our value proposition. And then at the same time that we're trying to improve our disclosure to become, the most trusted retailer out there, we're also trying to build institutional capabilities. This ESG journey is pretty fresh for a lot of companies. And so I'm working very closely with, everyone across the company, from audit to legal, communications to controllership, to just build institutional capabilities to do this new function. And then also a large part of my job is helping to advance the field of ESG. And so, for those of you that are thinking of getting into ESG, lots of companies are doing so, and it's really important work. So I would encourage you to do so. Within the field of ESG, as we're looking to advance it, because it is, still on the frontier, I'd say an important piece is listening to stakeholder feedback, and so that's a big part of the role. And then, it's great company to be in. We all want to see the same outcomes. we want to see capital creating positive financial returns and then see a positive impact on the planet and people. So it's a great role to be in, a great company to be in. So thank you for having us.
It's my pleasure. And Lauren, it's interesting. It's, many of us who work in this field know that you're not just the neighborhood store, right? You're not just the neighborhood retail store. You have a place in the economy where what you do impacts the lives of every Floridian in the case of our state. And I read, as I shared with you privately, I read your annual ESG report that I think you issued recently. And in that report, you talk about how you can drive climate change through the product supply chain. Do you want to tell our viewers and listeners what it is you're trying to accomplish in that regard?
Yeah, it's a very important part of our work. And we launched Project Gigaton, which is what we call that initiative, knowing that the best way for us to make a meaningful difference here is to work up our supply chain. We have over 90% of our emissions coming from scope 3. And so while we're very much working hard in our own operations to reduce emissions, we saw the huge value that we could have, the impact that we can have if we start partnering up our supply chain. And so our goal there was just to make it simple. We wanted to democratize the ability. You don't have to be a big company with a team of people looking at this stuff. We have calculators built in for all our suppliers. So if you're just starting out on this journey, you can make smart goals. You can look to role models in the industry to what they're doing and really just start to get your feet wet. Or if you're a P&G or Unilever, you can really be inspiring others doing the work. And so it's a wonderful partnership with our supply chain. At the same time, it was, again, the most important of moving the needle on emissions. And how we kind of launched it, in case anyone is interested in doing something similar, was we partnered with NGOs like EDF and others to make sure that every part of the science and measurement was spot on. We had lots of conversations with our suppliers to really understand what they needed and in what format to make sure when we launched it, it was, all greased up and everyone understood, how quickly uptick would happen because, we had done our research ahead of time and had the right stakeholders and partners in place.
And is the goal that you measure your results on an annual basis? I mean, how do you know when it's working?
Yeah, we are striving, we keep count every year and we report out every year. And so we just keep marking towards our goal.
And Katherine, just to bring you in on this part of the conversation, I know that obviously all of the energy corporations are looking at ESG, and you already mentioned equity, inclusion, and diversity as part of that entire conversation. But to focus on the E part for a minute, I know that your CEO launched, and we spoke to Pavita about this late last year as well. Your CEO launched an annual ESG day for the first time last year, right? And why did she do that? Why was that important to your company?
So to Lauren's point, ESG is increasingly becoming the conversation that we're having with our investors. And I think most large companies are really trying to navigate this new era where we're looking at how companies are navigating environmental, social, and governance, risk, and opportunity to make a positive impact on the planet and on society. And so just to kind of level set, I think there was a recent report by US CIF, the acronym, I cannot remember what it stands for, but basically has indicated that in the United States, around a third of all assets under management are in ESG-oriented funds. So increasingly, the everyday investor wants to know how companies are navigating some of these risks and opportunities. So it's not a thing off to the side. It's not a nice to do. This is increasingly becoming a must do. And so for us at Duke Energy, having a very intentional day where we could spend several hours with our large investors laying out how our energy transition, how our aspirations to provide reliable and affordable and increasingly clean energy actually manifest in our business strategy, and all of the different components of that was really, really important. Now, this wasn't the start of our ESG journey. Way back, I remember when I was in 2005, when I was back in North Carolina, my home state, running into people from Duke Energy who were talking about things like climate change and the steps they were taking. So this is not a new journey for Duke Energy by any stretch, but it built our ESG built on our 2019 announcement of net zero, and we just continue to provide greater visibility about our work and our progress in events like this and moments like this, and then set new aspirations. We actually announced our methane commitment at ESG Day this fall.
And just to reiterate, that methane commitment is part of the reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Is it the year 2050?
So a slightly different timeline. We've got a net zero commitment in our electricity generation by 2050 with a roadmap to, I want to make sure I say this right, but to get at least 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions out of the system by 2030 against a 2005 baseline. Our methane goal applies to our natural gas business, and that is a 2030 commitment for net zero there. And then we're also doing some really interesting work upstream through the One Future campaign or alliance, I think is the correct name, where we're really looking at how do we send a signal, a market signal upstream to the natural gas providers about what are they doing, what are the steps that they're taking to reduce their own emissions. So I think Lauren alluded to it a little bit with Project Gigaton. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I joined Duke Energy from Walmart. So Lauren is an old friend and a former colleague. So it's really nice to hear her work. But Lauren spoke about it with Project Gigaton, about how Walmart is really looking at the supply chain and activating the supply chain to take ambitious steps to address climate change through whatever mechanism is best and where they're most mature. For us, I think our methane commitment is similar to that in the sense that we're really looking at the supply chain and trying to understand how do we use our voice and create an enabling environment for others and supportive environment for others to join this effort and to cheerlead those that are already there.
Thank you, Katherine. And you went right there. I was going to ask you the different ways that both companies have partnered with one another. And I think you coming from Walmart to Duke is probably the first example, right? But I'm sure Walmart didn't feel that way.
We miss her dearly.
What are some of the examples that your two companies have worked together, not just in Florida, but generally? There must be some alliances and commonalities among your companies.
Yeah, maybe I could kick it off, and then Lauren, if you want to jump in or weigh in. So I would actually take it up a step and up a notch. I think, and I spoke about it at the start. I remember being in 2005, and I'd been working in sustainability for 5 years, and seeing the private sector really visible in a conversation about environmental and social issues, it just really wasn't happening. But in 2005, I was bumping into people with Duke Energy that were talking about steps that they were taking on climate. And that was also kind of very early in, and I don't want to steal any of Lauren's thunder, but very early aspirations for 100% renewable energy. And so, but those were the exceptions. Those companies were truly the exceptions to navigating and understanding and unpacking how they could contribute to these issues. And I think with the benefit of 20 years of history, I think being of personal history, trying to work with business, I think that now for a company not to take on these issues, not to have a voice, not to make a commitment is the exception. And so for me, I feel like we are, Duke, Walmart, and others are now increasingly a loud voice of business that's talking about how are we thinking about all of these things, not just, again, from a risk mitigation standpoint, but also from a value creation standpoint. I would also highlight, we do have a very recent example in Florida. We worked with Walmart and others on the Clean Energy Connection. The Florida PSC just announced their approval of that, and that's provides Duke Energy Florida customers with 750 megawatts of solar power at reliable price and affordable price. And so I think opening up the aperture and the accessibility for customers to say, yes, I would like renewable energy and to have an opportunity to participate and route their purchases in that direction is a really powerful tool and a really important signal.
Absolutely. And we'll get back to this because you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but there's a component to everything you both have discussed related to environmental justice and affordability and making sure that no one is left behind in these opportunities. And Katherine, I'll come back to you on that because I know that those are issues near and dear to your heart. Lauren, when you think about partnering with companies like Duke Energy, do you feel like both of your collective voices can really reach more people? And I've often said, just to lay this foundation for you, Lauren, I often have said that it's corporate America that can effectuate policy change in a real way, not government. And I think both of your companies are, some of the examples, right? So when we want to spread the message about using renewable energy or conservation or the benefits of solar, I think that you are nimble enough and have further, outreach, larger outreach than government to really effectuate those changes. How is it you do that?
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that this week. And I think a lot of people are starting to feel that way if they don't already, that, they're looking to corporations, they're looking at, what does capitalism look like in the future and what can companies be doing that may or may not be more effective or just as effective as governments and plays in what courts. So we, fully step up to the responsibility that we have. And in partnership with companies like Duke Energy and others, we would never be able to set or meet our goals without partnerships. It's, we set a goal this last fall to be commitment to be a regenerative company, which is not just mitigating or preserving, it's actually creating. Like Katherine was talking about, there's two pieces. There's a risk mitigation, which oftentimes folks will focus on, but there's also value creation. And frankly, when it comes to climate, we can't just mitigate risk anymore. We're too far. We have to be creating value as well. And, a crux of our commitment of being a regenerative company is to have a, net zero goal by 2050, what we set this last fall. And so in order for us to do that, we need people like Duke Energy and others to supply that. We are not an energy company ourselves and don't intend to be. And so, we really have to rely on partnerships. And like you mentioned, we get better outcomes through these engagements. If we go at it alone, we only get so far. So these are relationships, partnerships.
Right. Lauren, what do you do on the transportation side with your fleet? Are you looking or taking advantage of any of the electric vehicle options?
Yes, we are. That is part of our commitment to doing our net zero by 2050. We aren't using any carbon offsets, and so our fleet is very much a part of our commitment in getting those to EV.
That's great. So Katherine, let's use this audience question to get a little personal. Are you two ready to get a little personal? We share our personal stories to inform, inspire, motivate.
I am so ready. I feel like 2020, with all of us working from home, or many of us working from home, we had a lot of insight into people's personal lives, which I have personally welcomed.
Okay, good, because our first question must be from a student. He or she wants to know what you studied in college to prepare you for the career you're in. So what was your major? And so go ahead and tell us, Katherine, how what you studied in school and how you got into environmental sustainability.
Oh, I would like to pretend it was a very intentional path forward and all of the steps made a ton of sense. I went to a small school. I'm originally from North Carolina and wanted to leave the nest. And so went to a very small liberal arts school called Colorado College, where I majored in English literature. And did not, I think, have any idea what I wanted to do with my life. I moved home and returned back to North Carolina following college, and promptly got the job I'd had for the last 8 years back, and was a lifeguard and swim instructor for a few months until my parents said, you've got to transition into adulthood now. So I don't know if that's any kind of inspiration, but I think there are a lot of different pathways.
Absolutely. But I think that's a lesson right there for our viewers and listeners. You don't have to know right away. And I think more often than not, we each stumble into the path we're in right now. But I do know that you did work with, is it the Wildlife Foundation for a bit as well?
The World Wildlife Fund, yes. If you're a WWFer, you refer to yourself as a panda, because that's their logo is the panda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I spent a couple of years doing sports marketing right after college, and then moved to Oregon. I promise this will be brief, but I moved to Oregon to be a writer, and realized very quickly I didn't want to be a writer and didn't want to turn tail and go back to North Carolina and admit defeat. And so I found a job, and that's really how my career in sustainability got started. And it's really fascinating how everything has come kind of full circle. But I found a job with a small consulting company that did a lot of work with utilities and energy efficiency alliances and manufacturers and retailers like Walmart, basically to encourage customers to buy energy efficient appliances. And I just fell in love with how you can bring together disparate sectors with different incentives and different language, and arrive at a common understanding of where do we need to go and why is it good for you? And the reason it's good for you can be totally different from the reason it's good for you, and that's okay. And I just fell in love with the field, and this was back in 2000, and no one really understood what I found so exciting about marketing compact fluorescent light bulbs. But I was like, you guys, this is what I'm going to do with my life, and kind of the rest has just worked its way out. But I would say I spent about 6.5 years, I think, after a little bit after grad school, at the World Wildlife Fund, running a very large partnership with the Coca-Cola company, where we were looking at things like energy efficiency and sustainable agriculture and all sorts of and water issues, and it's just it's been a really fun field and a fun journey to be on.
It's wonderful. I'm always pleasantly surprised that more and more companies and stakeholders understand the nexus between energy and water. So, you were working in that area before it was cool, right? So good for you. And I think the second lesson for our viewers and listeners who might be considering a path in energy is that I didn't hear anything you said related to engineering, that it's not necessarily an industry you have to get into through an engineering degree or a STEM related field, although we always want to encourage STEM related careers because those are sustainable, high wage jobs, and we do want to see an increase in that regard. But that's just not the path you took, and you were and are successful nevertheless. So great lesson there to be flexible, right? Lauren, how did you get to where you are professionally?
My path is a little bit similar to Katherine's in the sense where it was not a linear, I see that, I see letter C, I'm going to take steps A and B to get there. I kind of have gone back and forth oscillating between two different worlds. One being, I majored in international business and marketing and minored in, Chinese and public relations and advertising. So very heavy on the business side. Then after college, wanted to do a year of giving back. And so went to AmeriCorps, which is like Peace Corps in the US. And so kind of went over to this public service, community-based, nonprofit type work. Followed that path for several years, ended up in Taiwan on a Fulbright fellowship doing some work over there, in the middle of a pineapple field by myself, no English speakers for like an hour's drive. And I was like, I think I have followed my passion too far. I'm going to apply to business school. And so then when back to in Chicago, decided then to stay on the business side for a little bit and joined Walmart in their finance department. Was there for several years when I was contacted about this opening, that had ESG as a piece of the work. And I was like, wow, that seems like it kind of brings those two worlds together. It's very analytical and, business focused, but at the same time, it has real positive impact and purpose and some of those things that I loved working in more of the nonprofit space. And so, the department was not even in existence at the time. It was like a side project in this role. And so there's, to reiterate kind of what Katherine's message was, sometimes these things can be hard to plan for. And you just kind of keep taking one step of like, I love this work. Just keep going. And then at least for me, I found, some great intersections and in roles that I could have never planned for.
And of course, can't say it enough, do what you're doing really, really well. And things seem to take care of themselves after that, don't they? Doesn't mean we don't keep our eyes open and see the opportunity and be willing as women to take the risks, right? That we are qualified and we can do this. Katherine, we've got a question related to environmental justice. I want to turn the question a little bit and bring it back into the ESG conversation that you started. In today's world, recognizing what's happening around us politically and socially, your company, among many others in the energy industry, really took a lead in making sure that all employees felt valued and see the opportunities that they have. How have you incorporated all of that into the ESG message?
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was at Walmart and really gravitated to when I came to Duke Energy, this transition happened very recently. I hopped over in August of 2020. So it's fairly recent. And I think this past year has really illuminated a couple of things. One, just how important certain sectors of the economy are in providing people with essential services. When I was at Walmart, I think I really, really appreciated the focus that we had on everyday low prices and everyday low cost as a way to help people live better. And I feel like I just stole a talking point from Lauren, so my apologies. And then when I came over to Duke Energy, the purpose of providing reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean energy in the midst of a global pandemic, I mean, that is just fundamentally extraordinarily powerful. And the work that Duke is doing now in the midst of a global pandemic, it's like fundamental and it's so powerful in the sense of how we're meeting a societal need just by operating our business. And then I think about the year we've had from a racial equity standpoint with Mr. Floyd's murder and just how we've had to respond as a company and really think through what are all of the different levers that we can be pulling to really try and address these issues. And these are hard issues. These are societal issues. And so, and I can't take any credit for it because I'm still so new, but to walk into and assume a foundation that had already pivoted and thought through a lot of really compelling grants that were oriented towards racial justice and social equity. And in particular, the foundation put the decision-making about who was going to award the grants and to what organizations into the hands of our employee resource group. And so the people with closest to the lived experience were making the decisions about where the funding would flow. And I thought that was extraordinarily powerful and fairly unique. The other thing that I thought that Duke Energy did this year that was really, really powerful was we had, in the wake of Mr. Floyd's killing, we had, I think we're north of 500 now dialogues, internal dialogues with our own employees, with leaders at the company to really try and unpack what we were seeing, what we were feeling, and all the different elements that were going on. And I think at the core of this, it's this question of like, what is ESG? And again, there's this focus on risk mitigation, but I see it as such a value creation opportunity for us to be thinking through as corporate leaders about really what's happening in the ecosystem around us. How are we responding as a company? How are we responding for our customers? How are we responding for our employees? How are we thinking about the communities where we operate? So I don't know that I'm answering your question.
You really are.
Correctly.
You are,
It's where my head is.
Well, and I'd add to your benefit and frankly to applaud your efforts, your company's efforts. One of the things that you did, even right here in Tallahassee, is I think the Big Bend Minority Chamber was one of the recipients of a Duke Energy Foundation grant. So the recognition that Duke dollars can go into these minority economic development councils or the chambers for the idea of job creation or making sure that folks have skills that empower, provide some economic empowerment. So we're going to put, it's right there on the website, Duke Energy, duke-energy.com/foundation. That's how viewers can learn more about foundation grants. And Lauren, I think Walmart has a similar grant structure, right? You have a foundation?
Yes, Walmart does have a foundation, and they do amazing work. Very thoughtful approach. Almost surgical on the way that they approach an issue where it's not never a Band-Aid. It's how are we going to systematically change this issue. And we also actually, each of our stores have a budget line for investing in their community, for giving grants to their community. And we've increased that over the last several years because we believe that the people in our stores know the communities best, and that they, we encourage them to make strategic and have a focus, whether it be, what's the core issue in your community right now? Is it, food insecurity or what is the topic? And so we have it both at more corporate level as well as down at the local level.
It's interesting with your travels to Asia. Did you experience anything there that's helping you with your job now, Lauren? Do you reflect on that time and think that there were things that you learned in that journey that make you better at what you do today?
Yeah, I would say that it wouldn't be unique to Asia, but I think putting yourself in pretty uncomfortable environments is really good for everyone. I think especially if you are learning a language, I think there's so much self-reflection and figuring out, why do I say these things? Or if I have to explain it to someone about, some of the nuances there, you just learn a lot about kind of your own mindset and all of these subconscious things. And, I would encourage, if there's students out there or, like you guys mentioned before, women out there that are contemplating a risk, like you will grow from it, no doubt. And making moves like that will, I think, always be beneficial. They're difficult in the moment, but you come out with some gold.
Yeah, we're always better for it. So Katherine, here's the last question. What advice would you give a second-year college student looking to enter the energy industry?
Oh, wow. I don't really know. I mean, mostly because I remember being that second-year college student and just being so lost. There was so much pressure of who are you going to be and what are you going to do and is it going to work out? And you don't even know what workout. I mean, at least from where I sat, I didn't even know what that even meant. And it felt like every decision was loaded. And it made trying to figure things out really, really hard. I think there was something about just how wide open the aperture was of everything that I could possibly do. I mean, I was your classic liberal arts student who are capable of an awful lot, but not really trained to do anything specific. And so I just remember being really, really overwhelmed. And so my advice, and it's been a few years since I've been in college, so I want to be really humble about my advice. But is that that's okay. It's okay not to have the answer. It's okay to try. I really counsel a lot of my friends who are in their 20s that it's a time to experiment. It's a time to figure out what you like doing. It's a time to figure out what you don't like doing. And nothing gets you experience like experience. And so try and fail, try and do something. I mean, there's a reason event planning disappeared really quickly from my resume. It was part of one of my jobs. I did not particularly enjoy it. I was not particularly good at it. And so the minute I could drop it from my resume, it disappeared because I never wanted to do event planning again. And so I think I would just encourage people to try and fail and to experiment and to talk to as many people as possible. I think one of the things that has really benefited me in my career is just I've had a diversity of experience in the sense of I've worked in different sectors. I've worked in the nonprofit and the for-profit. I'm the daughter of an academic, so I have a view into that world. And then I've been very, very fortunate to travel the world and talk to all kinds of people facing all kinds of issues and hear their perspectives and their thoughts. And so and even within the energy sector or Walmart, or when I was working with Coca-Cola and I was at WWF, I think seeing how other people approach problems and arrive at solutions, I think is really, really incredible because you can apply what works somewhere else to a new sector. And so you kind of limit the navel gazing and the same solution for every single problem just by having that breadth of experience and exposure.
And especially in light of what you do today with stakeholder engagement, you've learned how to develop and foster relationships. You probably have been able to tap into those relationships in the different places where you've worked, classic example, Walmart. But so much, I think you can't teach students today enough about the power of relationships and the power of communication. It doesn't matter what your field is. If we have strength in how we communicate with one another, we can do anything, I think.
I think I didn't fully appreciate the power of the back channel. I used to joke with Lauren, I called it puppeteering, the understanding and being able to pick up the phone and call someone and say, I know you've said this, but unpack it for me and tell me really what's going on, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, why you're feeling that way. Having those really healthy, trusted back channel relationships, I think as we get into a world where stakeholder engagement is going to be even more front and center, I think is just incredibly helpful because you know what problem you're solving.
That's right. That's right. Well, Lauren, what about you? What advice would you give that second year college student?
Yeah, I guess I have a little bit of a recency bias in the sense that I had a recruiting call earlier today where, someone's asking me, what classes they should take to be preparing for, roles next year. And, while there's so much to gain in school on the hard skills, any soft skill classes that you can take are, have a lifetime of reward to reap. So if you're able to take negotiation, think about how often you negotiate, whether, you want that salary or whether or not you're just trying to get a project out the door. Those are the classes that are really going to reap the rewards. Negotiations, people management. That's, like Katherine was talking about, if you can build those relationships, and that's not just, oh, I'm good at it, or, oh, I'm not good at it. It's a science and it's a practice. And so you can learn it. I'm not nearly as good at it as Katherine was, but just watching her and learning from her, I know that I got better. And so don't think that I'm not a people person or I'm an introvert. That won't stop you. You can still be very effective leader and negotiator, whatever the topic may be.
That's great. Great advice. So ladies, see, that didn't hurt very much, did it? Did you enjoy the show?
Yeah.
Very much.
Do I have agreement for you to come back and visit soon?
We would love to. I'm going to speak on behalf of Lauren because anytime I get to work with her again is a joy. And it was great to meet you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome to the show. I look forward to having you back. And Duke, thank you for your sponsorship. And ladies, you have to promise to come to the forum. This year's forum is October 27th through the 29th, hopefully live and in person in Orlando, but if not, certainly virtually. And so hopefully we'll have a reunion there. What do you think?
That sounds great.
Okay. Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Thank you, viewers.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.